Coach BJ here. There's a lot of videos about why businesses fail. What I want to do is highlight a video, a TED Talk, I love TED Talks, on the single business reason why startups succeed. A totally different take on it, but let's take a look.
I'm really excited to share with you some findings that really surprised me about what makes companies succeed the most, what factors actually matter the most for startup success. I believe that the startup organization is one of the greatest forms to make the world a better place. If you take a group of people with the right equity incentives and organize them in a startup, you can unlock human potential in a way never before possible. You get them to achieve unbelievable things. But if the startup organization is so great, why do so many fail? That's what I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out what actually matters most for startup success. And I wanted to try to be systematic about it, avoid some of my instincts and maybe misperceptions I have from so many companies I've seen over the years. I wanted to know this because I've been starting businesses since I was 12 years old, when I sold candy at the bus stop in junior high school, to high school when I made solar energy devices, to college when I made loudspeakers, and when I graduated from college, started software companies. And 20 years ago, I started Idea Lab, and in the last 20 years, we started more than 100 companies, many successes and many big failures. We learned a lot from those failures. So I tried to look across what factors accounted the most for company success and failure. So I looked at these 5. First, the idea. I used to think that the idea was everything. I named my company Idea Lab and how much I worship the aha moment when you first come up with the idea. But then over time, I came to think that maybe the team, the execution, adaptability, that mattered even more than the idea. I never thought I'd be quoting boxer Mike Tyson on the TED stage, but he once said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." And I think that's so true about business as well. So much about a team's execution is its ability to adapt to getting punched in the face by the customer. The customer is the true reality. And that's why I came to think that the team maybe was the most important thing. Then I started looking at the business model. Does the company have a very clear path generating customer revenues? That started rising to the top in my thinking about maybe what mattered most for success. Then I looked at the funding. Sometimes companies received intense amount of funding. Maybe that's the most important thing. And then of course the timing. Is the idea way too early and the world's not ready for it? Is it early, meaning you're in advance and you have to educate the world? Is it just right, or is it too late and there's already too many competitors? So I tried to look very carefully.
So let's stop there for a second and talk about, he had 5 different elements that he's looking at businesses and startups. I do work with incubator programs locally, and I love his concept that the customer is the true reality. Think about it, we focus a lot on, is the market there for your product? Every so often I'll work with an entrepreneur who has this idea that they are in love with, but they haven't vetted it against the customer. So I think that's an interesting element that he's talking about, that the customer tells you what they want. You have an idea and you need to read that customer. So that's one. The 5th element, which he talked about, which was timing, is also kind of interesting, because the timing, I relate to pain. Does the customer have a pain? Is there a problem that is currently happening? Are the planets aligned to that problem? And so I love the customer and the timing ones. Let's see what he has to say.
At these 5 factors across many companies. And I looked across all 100 Idea Lab companies and 100 non-Idea Lab companies to try and come up with something scientific about it. So first, on these Idea Lab companies, the top 5 companies, City Search, Cars Direct, GoTo, NetZero, Tickets.com, those all became billion-dollar successes. And the 5 companies on the bottom, Z.com, Insider Pages, My Life, Desktop Factory, People Inc., we all had high hopes for, but didn't succeed. So I tried to rank across all of those attributes how I felt those companies scored on each of those dimensions. And then for non-Idea Lab companies, I looked at wild successes like Airbnb and Instagram and Uber and YouTube and LinkedIn, and some failures, Webvan, Cosmo, Pets.com, Flues, and Friendster. The bottom companies had intense funding. They even had business models in some cases, but they didn't succeed. I tried to look at what factors actually counted the most for success and failure across all these companies, and the results really surprised me. The number one thing was timing. Timing accounted for 42% of the difference between success and failure. Team and execution came in second, and the idea, the differentiability of the idea, the unique idea, that actually came in third. Now, this isn't absolutely definitive. It's not to say that the idea isn't important. But it very much surprised me that the idea wasn't the most important thing. Sometimes it mattered more when it was actually timed. The last two, business model and funding, made sense to me, actually. I think business model makes sense to be that low because you can start out without a business model and then add one later if your customers are demanding what you're creating.
He makes an interesting point there, and he just said it. The customer is demanding what you are creating. It's interesting, the customer's not really on that list. The customer's kind of baked in into the element of timing. Is the customer interested? The team, or the idea or the truth, does it connect to the customer? So there's an element across all five of these that is the customer. Also, the funding one, I want to point that out because it is the lowest one on there, and folks tend to think they have to get funding. They have to get funding, and that is absolutely not the case. On a grassroots effort, you need to be focused on reading the customer, and that's what I teach my incubator students all the time. Is there's lots of ways to fund what you're trying to do if you can prove to your investors, and this is typically what the investors are looking for, is do you have evidence that the customer is responding to your idea? So, interesting concept and good science behind it. Let's keep going.
And funding, I think, as well. If you're underfunded at first, but you're gaining traction, especially in today's age, it's very, very easy to get intense funding. So now let me give you some specific examples about each of these. So take a wild success like Airbnb that everybody knows about. Well, that company was famously passed on by many smart investors because people thought, no one's going to rent out a space in their home to a stranger. Of course, people proved that wrong. But one of the reasons it succeeded, aside from a good business model, a good idea, great execution, is the timing. That company came out right during the height of the recession when people really needed extra money. And that maybe helped people overcome their objection to renting out their own home to a stranger. Same thing with Uber. Uber came out, incredible company, incredible business model, great execution too, but the timing was so perfect for their need to get drivers into the system. Drivers were looking for extra money. It was very, very important.
So he talks about need. And back to the customer one last time, he said if the customer is responding, they respond because they have a need, because they're trying to solve something, because they're actively seeking. So he makes an excellent point of the fact that the customer has to be looking for what you are offering at the same time you're offering it, and that's where that symbiotic relationship starts to happen.
Some of our early successes, CitySearch came out when people needed web pages. GoTo.com, which we announced actually at TED in 1998, was when companies were looking for cost-effective ways to get traffic. We thought the idea was so great, but actually the timing was probably maybe more important. And then some of our failures. We started a company called Z.com. It was an online entertainment company. We were so excited about it. We raised enough money. We had a great business model. We'd even signed incredibly great Hollywood talent to join the company. But broadband penetration was too low in 1999, 2000. It was too hard to watch video content online. You had to put codecs in your browser and do all this stuff. And the company eventually went out of business in 2003. Just 2 years later, when the codec problem was solved by Adobe Flash, and when broadband penetration crossed 50% in America, YouTube was perfectly timed. Great idea, but unbelievable timing. And in fact, YouTube didn't even have a business model when it first started. It wasn't even certain that that would work out. But that was beautifully, beautifully timed. So what I would say in summary is execution definitely matters a lot. The idea matters a lot. But timing might matter even more. And the best way to really assess timing is to really look whether consumers are really ready for what you have to offer them. And to be really, really honest about it, not be in denial about any results that you see. Because if you have something you love, you want to push it forward. But you have to be very, very honest about that factor on timing.
So I'm going to cover this on the timing one because what I find when I have folks looking at the marketplace and listening to their customers is the surveys they create to do this. The outreach, they survey customers. And anyone who's done surveys at any scientific level, there's a way to do a great survey and there's a way to lead the audience to your result. So making sure you do a great survey that really tells you what the customer wants, not what they think they want. And that's a common issue, is we survey the marketplace thinking we're going to get one thing, and the customer tells you this is what they want, but their actions don't follow it. So that's something to be super, super careful of, because it convinces us that the customer and the timing, they need what we have, they need what we're building. But looking for ways to do surveys, to do market analysis that finds the underlying behavior of what clients will do, not what they think they will do, which is often false. So that's an element that's very, very important as you start looking at the marketplace and what they'll do.
As I said earlier, I think startups can change the world to make the world a better place. I hope some of these insights can maybe help you have a slightly higher success ratio and thus make something great come to the world that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Thank you very much. It's been a great audience.
So let me close out there. You know, he talks about making sure that you have opportunities to build stuff. If you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to build something, take a look at the marketplace. The marketplace rules. The sooner you can get to an early product that actually has people putting money down, has people taking action the way you want them to do, the better off you are, and the better off you're on the right path to success. If you like this video, comment, subscribe, like below. Also, let me know in the comments what you'd like me to react to in the future. Take care. Until next time.